Hi. I love how you say that to me all the time wherever we are. Hey, sweetie. Nice to meet you. How are you today?
Good. I was going to make a joke, but
You
Rachel's
can.
not here and no one would understand it.
You can still make it. We'll make her watch it.
There's this joke that me and Rachel have that's like, hi, how are you today? Hi, how are you today? We just like really weirdly enunciate the words, yeah.
Sounds
That
like a
was the
fun
whole
joke.
joke.
Very intense joke. So I'm assuming you know why you were invited to my podcast today.
Yes, sir.
There's a story that we both share that has a lot to do with the theme of this month. And do you know what that theme is?
Peace.
Peace. It is peace. And just to recap for people that haven't seen all 4 episodes, this will be our 4th episode this month about peace. We are, one of the things we learned with different guests that I've been able to invite has to do with the elements of peace. We also talked about this wonderful book, The Anatomy of Peace, a great read that would help us understand how the mechanism of peace works. And it starts with your heart, having a heart at peace. And another thing that we learned with your sister Rachel and Patrick a couple of weeks ago is the idea of how do you create an environment of peace at home. And that's usually pretty hard. You know, you're being the little sister. I would have thought, when you were born, I thought, oh, the poor kid is going to get bullied. She's got all these brothers and this sister. It's amazing. You're like the queen in there. Do you remember that time that you told Reed that you wanted to play with your neighbor across the street? How does that go?
Yes, I do.
You guys quote it for us.
Which time?
The funniest one that we always quote.
Well, there's this girl across the street. Her name was Gracie. And I went up to my brother Reed and I said, all right, Reed, would you rather get eaten by a shark or have Gracie come over?
You could choose the shark, right?
He was probably pretty close.
Pretty close. Yeah, so it's always been kind of fun to have you because you added an element of a lot of sass, which has been really fun because there are so many times in a family life that we just need to laugh because there are lots of things that are hard that happen in a family, but also so many fun things. And of course, you have had some really fun birthdays. We talked about the Disneyland experience. There was a whole dance party at Disneyland.
That was a party.
Just for your birthday, the entire park just dance with you. But the other things that we have talked about is the idea of the self being in charge of finding peace. And we talked about concentric circles. The self is here, and then the family is the next circle of influence, and then you have the larger circle, which would be community and really the world that you live in. And you visited, how many countries have you visited so far?
I could take a while to count them, but I think it's like 8.
Right, so you got lucky to be young enough to tag along with Mom. And we went to Jordan and Egypt and all kinds of places last year. And then our last trip of the year, we were going to go to
Australia.
Do you remember why we were going to Australia? I mean, other than Mom's boring work.
Well, I know you went there to go research warm data labs with like this cool lady.
From Sweden.
Yeah. But we also went to see the Ribka twins who live in Melbourne, Australia, that were going to Perth, Australia for a book signing that I really wanted to go to.
Right. Who did you bring along?
Paula. Your
favorite, cutest little cousin. Yeah, it's been fun to have a friend that is also a cousin, right? So she came along, and I mostly want you to tell this story, but I just wanted to kind of not rehearse, but more like review the things that we've talked about so far this month. So yourself being in charge of being proactive about wanting to find peace and not being a victim of sorts. And part of the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think you used all these principles. Part of the reason I want you here to talk about it is because you, even as a 12-year-old, because that's when it happened, right? And you're like 13 going on like 30. You're so grown up. as a 12-year-old, you were able to use a lot of these principles to be able to make it through a very difficult experience. So self-connected with the divine, I think, is the number one thing. Having that heart at peace, because you know that there's something bigger than you. And usually I like to believe that that connection is especially powerful because I feel loved by someone bigger than me. Somebody that can protect me, somebody that can teach me, somebody that can guide me, and even just comfort me when I'm in a very difficult situation like I was in Australia. Then the other thing we talked about with family, part of the way that you can find peace with a family is knowing that you're a team, that you're in this together. Mom and dad and kids and you bossing all the brothers is kind of funny, actually. They do anything for you. And gratitude is a huge part of being at peace because it's hard to be a victim when you are grateful. And then the other thing we talked about, of course, was peace in the world, in the bigger circle, which you've seen a lot. We went to all kinds of projects in Jordan and met some of the girls that were orphans and they were able to be doing something with their lives. You saw Dr. Freddie, how wonderful that clinic was in the middle of Cairo. Very rudimentary but wonderfully loving place where he was able to connect with Muslims and Christians and just give of his time kindly, right? So that's the love part. But one of my other guests, Rule, who you know because we went to Guatemala with him, taught us about law and love and how it is connected. How if you can't follow like the law, your life becomes so chaotic, there's no peace, right? So there's a whole bunch of summary stuff, and because I know you applied all of those things. So tell us what happened in your recollection.
Well, I don't remember exactly what happened because I was asleep, but basically we woke up really, really early in the morning, and we were going to drive to where the Ribka twins were having their book signing. And we got in the car, and I laid down because I was really tired because we woke up really early. And then I can't really remember what happened next. I've had people tell me what happened. Mm-hmm. We basically took a wide left turn, and without having to diagram it out, we got hit by a car. And I don't really remember that. I remember laying on the ground. And I remember laying in your lap, and you were, swatting the flies away from my head. But I don't remember, being in pain at all. I was very peaceful. And then I got in a helicopter, and there was a very nice nurse who talked to me. Oh, that was fun. And then the next time I remember waking up is trying to pull a feeding tube out of my mouth because it was really annoying. Mom, have you ever had a feeding tube? It's the worst.
That was a hard moment for you. So let's take it to that place. So to fill in the gaps, yes, I took a wide turn and it was a utility truck coming in this narrow little road that did not look like a two-way road, but apparently was a highway, a 65-mile-an-hour highway. So it's amazing we're alive, right? I going back to that gratitude, so grateful. It's like, okay, how did we manage not to completely be pulverized? It was a utility truck, and we had a tiny rental car. I have pictures. You remember because you were driving all over for a week before.
Yeah.
Before that.
We had some chocolate strawberries in the front.
Yes. So when at the moment of that split second, when the car was coming my way, and I'm just like, okay, what's happening? And of course, usually I've driven in London before. I mean, we drove all over Oxford and London and stuff, and that was pretty crazy, but it was fine. We were safe. So I wasn't expecting to get in an accident in Australia. Driving in the wrong side of the road was not something I was worried about. And maybe I wonder if that has something to do with my own pride, thinking that I got this instead of focusing every second. I don't know. But I know that as we were fully awake and I'm in there pushing the brakes and trying to figure out how to swerve, my American mind went naturally to this side, because if I were to this side, there would be cars coming in my American driving, right? Even in Guatemala, you drive on the right side of the road. So I never really driven. I wasn't reacting consciously. Does that make sense? So unconsciously, I went to this side. But Paola did something. I'm sure I told you this story. Do you remember what she did? Your little cousin.
I do, but I would rather you tell it because I wasn't
You weren't
a
awake.
sentient human being at the moment.
She started saying, oh my gosh, we're going to hit that car. We're going to hit that car. And then right after she said that, she turned and she started to pray. It's like, oh, Heavenly Father, help us, please help us, please help us. I mean, I could hear her, and I mean, they're just reacting. And then we hit the car, and there's smoke everywhere. You don't remember this, but every one of the airbags popped all throughout the car. So none of the windows broke or anything, but you must have hit your head on the window, on the seat in front of you, or the console in the middle.
I'm assuming I hit it on the console because I was like laid down.
Yeah. And of course, I didn't turn around at that second, of course, because I was trying to stop and figure it out. But Paola could see that your head was broken. Your forehead was this wide. I mean, it had a cute. You saw the picture, which I didn't intend for you to see.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, no kidding. Now imagine you being the mom. How terrifying is that? It's like,
it was on my head, Mom. It doesn't get much worse than that.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't get more worse than that. But at the same time, I was just like, did I just kill my child? And it was obviously my fault, because even in an accident like that, I was at fault in the accident. That makes sense. So, so that, I think part of the story has to do with my peace and your peace. So both of us have a different, even though we're from a different angle, we both were able to experience peace, even though there was serious turmoil around us, right? So I would like to use a term from family science that is called a crucible. Do you know what that means?
Not really. The only thing that comes to my mind is the witch story.
The crucible.
The crucible.
Makes sense. So it really pretty much means something difficult that you go through. So difficult that it changes you. So when you go through a crucible, you have a choice. It can change you for better or for the worse. Right? Peace or fear, anger, frustration, blame, guilt, all the other things that are on this side. Or peace. So when she saw that, she started to pray, Rose, please, Heavenly Father, please help her be alive. Rose, you can't die. And so while I was trying to stop the car and all that, she was shaking you up a little to make sure that you were conscious. So she saved your life at the very beginning of it. Because if you went unconscious, maybe your brain would never have woken up. So that to me, that was such a miracle. And we'll do some other podcast about the miracles involved. It's too long of a story to tell, but there were, 1,000 miracles, little tiny turns all throughout. But today we really want to come back to that peace idea. I think her prayer and my prayer in my heart helped me walk out of that car without just literally crumbling. I've never had an accident in my life. I'm actually a really good driver, which is so awkward. To be attacked on something that you're very confident.
You're at least better than Grant.
Yeah, that what Gon said. I walked out of that car, and I need you to know this. I assume you've heard it. Walked out of the car and untrapped myself, broken clavicle. I still have the bump. No fun. All of this broken, bruised, from the seatbelt. Untrapped myself. And as I could see you through the window, there was a prayer that came to my heart that I am so glad it came to my heart at the right time. Do you remember what it was? Have you heard that part? I just prayed, okay, Heavenly Father, may it be thy will. And may I be strong enough to accept it. For all I know, you were gone. My baby girl that I was trying to take all over the world, I just killed my baby girl. I waited, 38 years to have you. 8 brothers and a sister. And in a split of a second, that was changed. And I thought, it's okay. It's okay, just help me get through this. So in this episode, I think one of the things about peace is surrendering to that divine that we've talked about in the other episodes. because it's application based, right? Just surrendering, like, there's nothing I can do. I cannot bring you life. I cannot rewind time. I cannot do anything but be strong enough to take on the repercussions. At that point, I would have thought could have been a funeral. It could have been mental damage. Could have been physical damage forever. You probably couldn't walk because you broke. What else did you break?
I broke 4 vertebrae, and I fractured my foot, and I fractured my skull.
Yeah, big time. So you have a massive scar going this direction and one going this direction.
And one there.
Yeah.
And one there.
Right.
And
the foot. Okay, so that's the part that you were asleep for. But I'd like you to tell me after that, how did you manage to be as powerful as you were? Remember, I said that before, and you're like, I just did what I needed to do. But not most 12-year-olds don't just do what they needed to do. Some 40-year-olds give up.
Well, everyone always says I was really, really strong, but I literally just laid in a bed for a month. That was all I had to do. And I basically I didn't realize that I had gotten in a car accident. I was just laying there. Because I had a very itchy hole in my head right there. But I thought that I had been walking around and hanging out with people because I just had really weird dreams that were like, yeah, you're walking around, you're going to the beach. I didn't know I got in a car accident. How was I supposed to know that?
Do you remember the spiders and the factory? What was that?
I thought I had been transported to a warehouse because when they put you in the MRI machine, it feels like a conveyor belt. I thought you guys were checking me into security at the airport like a bag.
We've gone through so many airports that year. They go through us.
Because there were like people right next to the thing, like checking on me to make sure I was just like alive.
Right.
And I was just on a conveyor belt, like...
Because that's what the machine does.
Yeah, and it felt like I was in one of those buckets that you, like, put your phone and stuff in.
That's funny. It was morphine. That's what the effects of the morphine that you were having.
Okay.
And the spiders, that vent, remember that vent above your head?
Oh, yes, there was a vent right above my head. It had 21 prongs going down, because I had nothing to do but count the prongs on the vent right above my head, because I could not bend my neck.
Yeah, show what the...
Oh, I had a brace that went up around my chin like that. It was very painful. It went all the way down to the bottom of my rib cage.
So you really literally was
So annoying.
So you could see spiders coming out of that vent?
Yes, there were giant spiders coming out of the vent above my head.
In a very clean, modern hospital, right?
Yeah, I thought I was outside.
There were... What we found out later, of course, it was that it's part of the morphine effects.
You see lots of spiders.
Yeah, seeing spiders is one of those things.
I thought you were a strawberry.
I know. That was really funny. Mom, you're a strawberry. And then you told me I was something else.
You were a snake.
A snake, yeah. I took the strawberry. I thought that was a little better. It seemed funny now. At the moment when you woke up the first time, we didn't know that you were going to be alive. Right? Do you remember how many machines you had around you?
Like 30. There's so many. I had an IV in every possible place you can put an IV. I had them in my knees and my feet and my hands and my elbows.
Yeah, every crook in your body.
So annoying.
Yeah, I remember the feeding tube. That was difficult. So...
I hate that thing.
Yeah. So there was one time that you cried. Like, I just want to go home. It was Christmas time.
It was when I figured out that I wasn't going to be home for Christmas.
Yeah.
Because you said that if I did everything that I had to do, I'd be home for Christmas. We'd be able to celebrate my birthday, which is in December. But then the doctors came in and they said the surgery won't happen till at least January.
Do you remember why?
And I started crying. It's because I didn't want to.
They had a holiday.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't want to.
Yeah, it was Christmas and New Year's, and you were stable enough, so we had to wait. And I'm grateful, that we were grateful to just be there and be in great hands. So I can't complain too much. But yes, that was the reason. And so we worked really hard. I mean, you worked really hard. Do you remember how hard it was the first day to even eat or drink anything?
I don't like eating stuff.
That was so hard. And you didn't want to drink anything. And your bodies, your valves weren't working. Nothing was working. So they were trying to give you, what was that beautiful thing he gave you every morning?
It was slime. Yeah, basically it was slime. It was slime in a cup that I had to drink to, like, cleanse my immune system.
It was so
It's
that
disgusting.
you could do a bowel movement.
It tasted like slimy, like wet, slimy bread.
And the funny thing, I mean, it's not so funny, but you're like the pickiest child I have.
So disgusting.
Probably because you're the baby and you're the boss. Most of my children wouldn't have been allowed to not eat their vegetables. You do eat broccoli.
Broccoli's the best.
Yeah, and chicken. So we ate lots of broccoli, lots of chicken. Anyway, so I think it took a lot of power for you to get to the point that you finally ate something, you finally drank something.
Cinnamon rolls.
Yes, cinnamon rolls was quite a quest to find them, right?
They don't sell cinnamon rolls in Australia.
Do you remember how we found them?
Our friends from Australia went to a cool bakery, and they had cinnamon rolls.
Yes, they researched any American recipe once, and they finally found one, and they brought us some.
So good.
And you could eat a bite the first time. I couldn't eat more than that because you could not digest.
This big.
Yeah, it was big. So let's get back to like the things we talked about in the beginning. How do any of those things apply? There were difficult moments every time. You were in a wheelchair for a while. You couldn't walk for a while. You stuck to a bed is no fun. You just had a really good attitude about it, and Dad read you Harry Potter and stuff, but it was no fun. You were in pain. So what do you think? How did those things? How did you use any of those tools to make it through?
Well, one thing that I had something to look forward to every day, because I learned in my Science of Happiness class that the 3 things you need in life is something to do, someone to love, and something to look forward to.
Ooh, I didn't know this. This is good. Something to do, someone to love.
Yeah, and something to look forward to.
Something to look forward to. I like.
Those are the recipe for happiness.
I like that. So tell us how did you use that recipe? I love it. In the session with Rachel and Patrick, we're talking about math. I love the face.
I hate math.
So today we're going to talk about cooking. It sounds a lot more exciting. You're really good at cooking, like that cloud bread you made. So how did you use this recipe?
Well, something to do. I didn't do anything. I mostly just sat on my phone and scrolled through TikTok like your average teenager. Someone to love. I had Paula with me, who's basically my best friend.
Yeah.
And I mean, she left after a little while, but she was there and we partied. And something to look forward to. 10:30 a.m. was my something to look forward to every day, because that was when Rachel woke up and I could FaceTime her.
Right.
I had an alarm set on my phone for when I could FaceTime Rachel.
I remember that. It was so important. She FaceTime you right before bed?
Yeah.
And that's just like really late at night.
Yeah, it was so late because the time difference is like 12 hours.
Yeah. Okay, so something to look forward to. And you mentioned that Christmas would have been that thing. That was our goal. We did, remember all the essential oils we put on your back and all the bone broth that we drank. I mean, mostly you. We had all kinds of healing things for your body that we were doing, right? And then remember the walking?
Oh yeah, you made me walk a mile every day.
Yes, with a boot and a helmet and a brace.
You tempted me with ice cream.
Yes, because you were looking forward to
that.
that.
Ice cream was like a mile away.
It was the best gelato on earth. That wasn't that great.
It was so good.
Yeah. And you love the bone broth. We'll talk about something to do in a moment, because we did end up finding, once you got out of just vegetable part, you said you were a potato. You were no longer a potato when you got out of the hospital and out. So what are the things that you ended up doing?
I bought a ukulele. And I didn't really teach myself. I went to voice lessons with Kyra, and Kyra's the best, and I love Kyra. And she gave me voice lessons, and she taught me how to play the ukulele, and she just like hung out with me for an hour every day.
Yeah.
And I also bought a camera. Yeah, and I drew a lot.
And you wrote a lot.
I wrote a lot. I don't know what happened to the things I wrote. They're gone. So
So sad because they were like hours at a time.
yeah, I just like sat in my room and wrote for like 7 hours.
Yeah. And then we did, so we had something to do. So when we were talking about the idea of peace in a family, the foundation, the anchor is that love, right? So you say someone to love. How did you feel about your family? How did they behave?
Well, I remember specifically on my birthday, we had like this huge FaceTime, and Callum sent me a video, and Callum made me very happy.
Who's Callum?
Callum's my nephew. He was 2, and he sent me a video of him playing with some toys and ripping off a Band-Aid and going like, "Be free."
Oh,
It
I
made
remember
me
that.
really happy.
Be free. That was cute.
Yeah.
And what did Dad do?
Dad traveled to Australia like 19 times, like so many times. And he read me books while I was there. And yeah.
I thought that was a particularly loving sacrifice because of his trouble with Parkinson's. It's one of the worst things to do when you have Parkinson's, and he's very tall.
Just to sit on a plane for 30 hours.
Yeah. So it was literally 30 hours door to door 7 times. And that's just one direction, right?
Rachel
So
came a lot too.
14 times, yes. That was the gift you wanted. That's the only thing you really, really wanted, which was really beautiful.
And I got Scotty and Grant and Rachel for Christmas. And Dad.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had to remember that cool house we got to stay in.
Yeah, it had a pool. And Scotty read to us while I dipped my feet in the pool and like Rachel was tanning.
Yeah. I do remember how many meals we had and visitors and all this wonderful, wonderful support of people that used
So
to
many random people just came and talked to me.
It was so great. It was so great to me, get me sane. Strangers that became best friends. Do you remember how we got that house, the holiday house?
Your friend let us use it because it was theirs. Don't remember.
A friend that I never met before. Is now
It's
a friend.
still a friend of mine.
She's a friend now. It was kind of a wild line of miracle after miracle that got us to that house because I think it would be. Do you remember how many times we moved?
11.
Plus the 3 times that we moved before. 11 at least after you were fine.
We calculated it once.
Yeah. Do you remember why?
Because it was Christmas season and everybody wanted to be in Australia because it's nice and warm and pretty. And so none of the Airbnbs were long enough not booked out, so we had to keep on changing locations.
Yeah. So it was physically difficult. I mean, forget about the brace and the leg and everything. On top of that, we had constant moving, and it was just you and me most of the time, and my crazy wrapped up arm with my clavicle, right? So those were the successes. But tell us some of the dark moments you experienced, because I think one of the things that happens sometimes, we try to pretend to have fake peace and fake happiness and fake success, that we don't acknowledge that there are dark moments, and that in order for them to be successful, you have to acknowledge both.
Well, before we got to Australia, I wasn't really in a good headspace either. I was only emotionally capable to going to one class at school, and I didn't have any friends, and I was just kind of lonely in general. And so I brought Paula because she was really my only friend at the time. And so I was already kind of teetering on the edge of just falling into a really bad mindset. And after I got in my car accident and I was alone so much, it's kind of like it pushed me off the edge of it. And you always say I was very positive. I was not very positive.
You showed a good face.
Yes, I'm an actress.
Right.
But I remember one of my friends, well, she wasn't really my friend. She used to be my friend. I kept up with her on Instagram, and I saw her slowly kind of not text me anymore and post pictures with other people saying that they were like her favorite person and stuff. And it kind of made me feel almost worthless that I had been struggling so hard to get back to nobody who cared about me.
Mm-hmm.
And I eventually blocked her and I was fine, but it's kind of, I guess she kind of embedded something into me that makes me almost feel like I wasn't deserving of love, and that was really hard at the time.
Yeah.
When so many people were telling me they loved me.
Right. A couple of thousand people.
I couldn't really believe it.
Right.
And I told a story on another thing where I was just about to take a bath, and I just looked into the water and I just imagined drowning. And I couldn't get myself to do it. I've tried, it's very painful. But my friend, her name is Sophia. She's been friends with me since I was in about 2nd grade. And she just texted me, and she acted like everything was normal instead of just like coddling me like most people were doing, like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Like, does your head hurt and stuff? She was just talking to me like a normal person. Made me feel so happy. And I guess her and Paula kind of got me through all of that because they loved me, and I could see that they loved me. They didn't have to tell me all the time that, oh my gosh, you're so brave, I love you, you're doing such a great job. I could just feel it from them.
Right.
And I'm not gonna pretend like I was peaceful the whole time. I wasn't at all. I probably wasn't the best person to share a house with.
You were very kind.
It's probably because I was alone most of the time. I just kind of sat by myself and wrote stuff and played my ukulele.
Yeah, I guess you did not want me in the room very often when we had more than a house, because usually we had a hotel room or a hospital room, and I had nowhere else that I was going to be. But
I like being alone.
yeah, I noticed that you definitely wanted to be alone. But it was good to have those connections with music and things that you love and writing. And
my ukulele is still very therapeutic to me. I've been learning a lot more songs, and it just like sits by my little cushion.
with all your stickers.
When I'm sad, I have a few songs that I play, and they make me happy.
Right. Yeah. So when we had another interview a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned that you came out of that bathtub and you prayed. Tell us about that. How did that help you, that connecting with the divine?
Well, I got out of the bathtub, which was very difficult because I was in a full body brace, which I had to bathe with because my back was broken. But I just kind of I didn't really fall. Most people say they fell to their knees when they have a powerful experience, but no. I just kind of stood there. I leaned against the counter, and I put my hands together, and I prayed, and I didn't pray to be healed or to go home. I just prayed that I would be able to kind of endure it, because I didn't think it was very possible that I was going home soon, and I didn't want to pray for something that wasn't going to happen and get disappointed. So I just prayed to be able to make it through all of it. And I did.
Yeah, amazingly well. I mean, if people didn't know that story, they were pretty shocked by how, I mean, you were pleasant. And yes, you didn't want mom every minute of the day next to you, and that makes sense. You're very more of a creative introvert. So I knew I needed to leave this space, and it was hard on me, thinking, oh no, I want to cuddle my baby. You weren't ready to cuddle. You needed to grow on your own. You need to be in a little cocoon and eventually mold into a new creature like a butterfly, right? So let's talk about another hard thing. As long as we're in the hard, sad part of the experience, because it was a lot of fun. We did get some really cool dog martins.
Got some pretty cool friends that I still talk to.
Very cool friends. Even people your age, instead of all the fun old people that came to visit.
Charlie and Ashley.
Yeah, I love those girls. They were great. Okay, so tell me that moment. Obviously, the first operation, you did not have to consent to it. You were out. You were in a helicopter.
I was a potato.
You're a potato. And one thing that I don't know that you would remember. You said something very powerful to me, which connects right to those three things. I had no idea you knew this recipe. This is a really cool recipe. I'm going to apply it to my life. You said to me over and over when I was trying to swat the flies and all that, which helped keep you conscious, actually, which I didn't realize then because it was really annoying and I had a broken arm trying to do it. You said, I love you, Mommy. Thank you, Mommy. Just regular intervals, you kept saying that. I said, Mom, it hurts, Mom, get the flies off of me. I love you, Mommy. Thank you, Mommy. And I'm like, can you imagine? It's like, you thank me for almost killing you? You still love me even though this just happened. You know what I mean? So that, I think you're self-conscious because you don't remember. I mean, not yourself, yeah, your deep brain, your deep spirit was doing the gratitude part we talked about and the love part that you talked about. How interesting, huh? That from the beginning your whole soul was trying to heal so much that you were showing gratitude and you were showing love. Okay, so let's talk about the last operation, the one that you were fully awake and had to consent to.
Well, we went in to get consulted for the surgery 3 weeks before. So I want to say it was beginning of January.
Mm-hmm.
And they handed me this document.
And you're 12.
And
barely
I was
13.
Barely 13, probably 4 days past 13.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, we need to give you a right side cranioplasty surgery.
Sounds right.
Which is where I broke my skull right here. And they
had
said
to replace the skull they had taken out.
Yeah, so they took out my skull because my brain was swelling and they put it in the freezer and they were going to put it back. And they told me that there was a high risk of infection and that I could have to start all over again and that I might die. And I wasn't really worried about dying. I was fine with dying. It was at that point that I was just, it would have been easier. But the thought of having to take out my skull again and wear a helmet for a couple months, it didn't quite make me sad. It really just made me angry. Mm-hmm. And it made me cry. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of sat there for a second and I cried and I signed it and I agreed to go into surgery. I didn't really see any other option. It's not like I could just walk out of the hospital and be like, nope, I'm not getting the surgery. I'm gonna go die and fall on my head.
You could have had a big tantrum, but you didn't.
Yeah, I'm not very dramatic in that sense.
Do you remember the third thing, the third possibility?
Infection?
Mental.
Oh yeah, brain damage. I could also have gotten brain damage. Yeah. I probably did. I'm failing school.
It's kind of funny, actually, now that this has happened, and we got to test it over and over and over again, and you're full on functional. But some of your teachers don't know that.
Why am I not smart anymore?
Yes, you are. Some of your teachers don't know that, so they let you sleep in class. So now that they see the podcast, they will realize that you were just fine. It's clever. Okay, sweetie, I really appreciate you sharing this, and I think it's very grown up and mature to even talk about something like this. You know how many kids in Utah especially, but everywhere, are struggling with wanting to love themselves and trying not to end their life. It's a real thing, and you know it. You know that there are a lot of people out there that are really suffering, and that you thought of it and you acknowledged it and you overcame it. I think that's amazing. And I'm not saying that your life will be easy from now on, because it isn't. You know, that growing up is painful. And even at 51, life is still painful. And that's okay. It's how we earn our stars for the next level. I think we probably signed up into the PhD track of life. Get lots of education. Anyway, we don't. Is there anything that you would like to say? Anything that you think maybe you didn't get a chance to share today? And I'd love to have it about the peace thing that we talked about, but it doesn't have to be only about that.
Well, one of the biggest problems is, like I said, was how bad my mindset was already going into it.
Right, mindset.
And I used to think that because I was depressed, I had clinical depression, I couldn't overcome it because it was something in my brain and I could not change it. And it made me feel kind of helpless. And when I went through that, I kept on thinking, you have to be sad. You have to be down because that's who you are. And when I got home, it's almost like something kind of switched in my brain when I saw like all the people waiting for me to come home.
Yes.
And I just kind of thought in my brain, I don't need to be sad anymore. That's not the person I want to be. And so even if it's a chemical imbalance in my brain that's a problem, that I might always be a little bit sad, I kind of chose peace over chaos, I guess.
I love that.
And even though I'm still struggling, I still get sad a lot. I still struggle with not wanting to be alive and hating the way that I am. But because I chose peace, I've been a lot happier than I would have been.
That's actually very deep. You imagine what the world would be like if more kids and adults realized that they don't have to be victims to anything, not even something as overpowering as a mental illness. Depression is a real thing. Anxiety is a real thing. And you remember that conversation we had on our way to go get your little dinosaur?
Dinosaur.
What's his name?
His name is Bubbles.
Yeah, Bubbles. We drove all the way to
Bubbles, the color-changing dinosaur.
Yeah, like an hour and a half, right? We drove far away.
I really wanted
because that's the only place that had it.
Basically a very tall 5-year-old.
Yeah, I love it. You're my baby, so you need to stay a baby as long as you can stay. And that was a deep conversation, and you shared some of the things that you shared today. But I think to wrap it all up, I think having the example of a 12-year-old, 13-year-old. I'm
almost 14.
No,
I turned 14.
It's been a year.
I could tell you exactly how many seconds.
How many seconds?
It's on my phone.
You left your phone in the room.
Well, let's see. What day is today? November 24th. That means there is about 36 days till my birthday.
And a few seconds, right?
And a few seconds.
Yeah, I think that's a very important real life crucible where the things you had learned, even at 12, you had learned all kinds of stuff that really helped you survive through this. And you had the connection to a higher power, the divine, but also you had your family systems and you had people that loved you, even though that friend was a pain. There were other people that loved you. It was just hard to believe it. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, I appreciate you being willing to talk about it. And I like your new Christmas sweater.
Thank you. I do too. It's very soft.
Thank you, Rose. We'll
You're
see you
welcome.
at home. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I think it might be familiar to most of you. That little crucible we had in Australia. Thank you, Rose, for being open and willing to be very vulnerable. If you want to learn more, just visit @peacetoday.com.